Pursuing a career in professional video gaming, as comical as that may sound, is a reality for hundreds of young and ambitious computer enthusiasts. The innovators of the multi-billion-dollar video game industry give back to their most dedicated and skilled players in the form of competitions. These competitions, that began in basements, now sell out internationally known sports arenas such as the Staples Center in Los Angeles and Madison Square Garden in New York City. As a result of these events, esports has been recognized by ESPN and is reported on online alongside of traditional sports. The emergence of this esports scene led to the creation of organizations focused entirely on esports. These organizations were formed in hopes of becoming the brand at the forefront of this esports movement. Team Solo Mid is an esports organization founded by two brothers, Andy and Dan Din, in 2009. The brothers created their organization around the community website that they created for the game League of Legends, known as solomid.net. Team Solo Mid, or TSM for short, is now internationally known and arguably the most successful esports organization in the Western Hemisphere. TSM houses teams across multiple video game platforms and facilitates their skill level in hopes of them becoming the best in the world. The revenue for these organizations comes primarily from sponsors that advertise themselves on team jerseys or sponsor tournaments. The sponsors care about the team's performance. This adds pressure for each organization to do well, and they run the risk of losing their sponsorships and revenue if they fail to do so. Esports can be an exciting and rewarding field. Players of any age can be recruited from anywhere and become celebrities on a world stage for playing something that they are exceptional. However, the reality of this new industry is that the odds of becoming a professional esports player are as slim as the odds of playing professionally in any other athletic sport. League of Legends in particular has 23 million active daily players across the globe. Of those 23 million, only a couple hundred are playing the game at a caliber that would gain the attention of an esports organization. Pursuing a career in playing video games professionally is a reality, but it is no more a reality than playing professional basketball. Assuming that a player has the required skill to be recruited by one of these organizations, they must consistently be at the top of their game. Organizations have players practice day in and day out, on weekends and holidays, for up to 16 hours a day. These long and extensive hours is only one of the many factors that can lead to a player completely shutting down and getting burnt out. Austin Shin, known by his online alias Link, was a former player for the organization Counterlogic Gaming. After a poor performing season and a boatload of ridicule from the Counterlogic Gaming fanbase, Link stepped down from his role on the 5-man League of Legends team. After his 3-year span with the organization, Link released a tell-all of his experiences in esports. He titled the 17-page document The Dunzo Manifesto. He describes the frustration experienced from long hours of practice against other teams to only see no improvement in team cohesion or gameplay. Link's excursion to pursue professional video games for a living did not hinder his tertiary education. After retracting from the esports scene, he has returned to his study of computer science at UC Berkeley. Now, Link had the privilege of playing with one of the most esteemed and coordinated organizations in esports. Many young players entering the scene can only deal with smaller and riskier organizations whose motives are unknown. The contracts that these amateur players sign can be faulty and baseless. Marcin Wolski, known by his alias Corey, was threatened by Meet Your Makers, his organization, stating that they were going to take his mother's house. Corey initially left the organization after they failed to pay him for several months of playing under the organization's brand. Meet Your Makers stated that Corey breached his contract by not playing for them in the next split of the season, and the manager for the team attempted to intimidate the player through a phone call, saying that Corey would most certainly lose the house his mother had lived in. Riot Games, the game developer behind League of Legends, intervened and fined the team $5,000 and indefinitely banned the manager responsible for the aforementioned threat. Other organizations like Team Impulse have been removed from the professional circuit by the game developers for not compensating their players for their time played. Compensation for players ranges far and wide across many different organizations. Depending on the success of the organization, salaries for players can exceed 6 digits. However, most organizations that start out in the scene struggle to pay their players an equivalent of minimum wage. This wage, and even wages temporarily in the 6 digits, are not nearly enough to make a career out of, especially when the scene has very low job security. Team Solo Mid, as mentioned earlier, has been unable to find a good match to complete their League of Legends team. They are currently searching for a sixth person to fill the role over the span of 2 years. Video games require intensive mental determination and dexterity. Most professionals retire from playing esports by the age of 25 when their reflexes start to deteriorate and are aptly replaced with younger and more ambitious talent. But to reach the age of 25 and to retire would be considered a very successful esports career, as most players only last about 1 year in the scene. Outside of playing the video game, former players have taken on roles in esports organizations and game developers. Former players will make appearances on broadcasts of esports as a commentator or an analyst during events in hopes of remaining relevant in the scene. Other players retire from playing the game, but continue working for their organization behind the scenes as a coach or an analyst for the new roster. Their experience and knowledge of the game is also valuable to the entrepreneurs looking to get involved in esports. The esports scene has only been around for a handful of years in the West. The scene is vastly growing in popularity and has even gained the interest of billionaire Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. Mark has gone on stage during an event and played an exhibition match against the CEO of Intel. He has expressed a large interest in starting an esports organization, and his integration to the scene would greatly validate it in the camera eye. When interviewed, he had this to say.
So we know you're a business guy, you're the owner of the Mavericks, you're huge on Shark Tank, so I think that people kind of want to know what's bringing you here. Are you going to be buying a team? Are you investing into this?
You're just going to have to stay tuned. I mean, look, one thing I will say is I love Colin, but he's an idiot when it comes to esports, right?
And we're, of course, talking about my co-host on Fox, Colin Cowherd, who calls e-gamers nerds. No, and I have to disagree with them completely. But what do you have to say to guys like Colin who just hate on the e-gamers?
Look, I'm a noob. You know, I'm still getting into it, but I love it, right? It's like playing five-dimensional chess against the world, right? It's like one of the smartest games I've ever played. You've got to have dexterity. You got to be quick. This is a real sport, and people are going to figure it out really, really quick.
It is a real sport.
For the 2-week duration of our project, our team decided to simulate the environments the professional teams are actually subjected to. All of us are of age, or nearly of age, to actually compete, so we determined we could return accurate results that would reflect the psychological states and physical wear of true professionals. On the Friday of April 29th, we departed from school to Berlin, Maryland, where we assembled a 5-person workstation in a townhouse, resembling how a team would actually live. We spent our time recreating a professional atmosphere. We cooked, cleaned, and managed the entirety of the household and its chores with our mentor, all the while juggling our practice and work. With roughly $200 in food, we immediately dove in to start playing as many games as we could. Our week started off strong, with consistent wins and cohesive teamwork. We won games often, and it encouraged us to keep playing and push forward. However, losses were inevitable, and even in the beginning, each and every loss affected the team atmosphere. Laughing and jovial attitudes would descend into bickering and frustration. We questioned why our mentality would change so drastically under merely one session of underperforming. As the week progressed, we continued to win games, but the constant sting of intermittent losses still affected our team environment, even causing players to abandon their computers for breaks. By the middle of the week, we hit a slump and lost many games, where tensions began to hit a peak. Loss after loss piled up and affected players differently. Some wanted to push forward to finally get a win, while others just wanted to end that night's work time early. We not only suffered from our own frustration, but from physical tiredness as a result of our changing eating and sleeping schedules. After that slump, we continued to win games until the end of the week. We ended the week tired, some of us even burnt out. Despite our frustration with losses, we ended with a whopping 69% win ratio across over 70 games, each averaging out to 38 minutes long. For some idea of how long that is, it was over 45 hours of time spent in-game, not including pre-game work and our own practice games. As the week came to a close, we realized our results didn't completely match our hypothesis. Rather than being at each other's throats, we'd spent the majority of the week in mostly good spirits. We had worked well, maintained our house, and made it through the week. With that said, some negatives were identifiable. By the last day, we had noticed our arguing and frustration had increased, and we were physically exhausted, despite a generally relaxed schedule. Our constant interaction, late-night schedules, and scattered meals left us in a definitively weaker state than when we started. Overall, we expected much more immediate results. Our stress and exhaustion, rather than impacting us immediately, took time to manifest. Slowly, we all grew somewhat tired of the game, only after a week of playing. The results showed that the effect this team-oriented environment had on us was one that slowly wore on us. We can only imagine what we'd feel like after a month or after a year. It became clear to us how professional players get worn down, both by impending losses and sometimes physical inactivity. While we had a stellar win-loss ratio, not every team does, and the psychological effects losing had on us could only increase exponentially under teams which struggle to win their scrimmages in professional matches. The development and rising popularity of esports is both interesting and exciting for more than just gamers and computer enthusiasts. It marks the rise of something unprecedented in entertainment. That said, the field still has a long way to go before creating a healthy environment for competitors. We saw, both through our research and personal experience, the lasting effects playing professionally can have. Professional esports is not a field for everyone, and is certainly not easy by any stretch of the imagination. Constant work, sometimes for little to no turnout, is often expected with the constant threat of low job security. We hope to have, in this presentation, shown the complexity and dedication behind the professional gamers that may or may not be clear at first glance. We'd like to thank our mentors, Sean Mulryan, also known as Hidaka, who helped us better understand the field of esports from his roles in Enemy Esports and Rogue, and Luis Seaman, who owned the house and watched over us during the week we conducted our experiment. We are grateful for the opportunity to have worked on this documentary. Thank you.